Welcome to the Dream Novel channel. Before starting to listen to the fun in this clip, don't forget to like and comment, so that the admin will have the encouragement to continue making clips. Let's go listen. Channel Dream Novel. Chapter 161, Charms. Class is never short of surprises. The Kyleites stood frozen, watching in stunned silence as Kanna turned and walked into the Charms classroom. They hadn't expected her to actually follow through on what she'd said earlier. This is Felix Felicis. If it had been the Weasley twins in her place, they probably wouldn't have cared if they really turned into Krupps, much less thought twice about joking around with it. Kyle opened his mouth, about to say something, but Kanna was already seated in class, chatting with her roommate. Seeing this, he had no choice but to pocket the bottle of Felix Felicis for now and follow her inside. Today's lesson was on the engorgement charm, a handy household spell that Hagrid frequently used. The massive pumpkins in his garden, all thanks to the engorgement charm. The most amazing thing about this spell was that while magic couldn't conjure food out of thin air, it could increase the size of existing food without altering its taste. Oddly enough, though, no one ever actually ate anything charmed this way. Hagrid's pumpkins, for instance, were mostly used as Halloween decorations. Now, gesture is crucial, Professor Flitwick said earnestly from the front of the class. Remember what I just explained. Keep your arms steady, use your wrist, draw a downward circle, and don't forget the incantation. Although the engorgement charm was part of the second-year curriculum, it wasn't difficult, certainly simpler than the levitation charm. Kyle focused on the button lying on the table in front of him, giving his wand a gentle twirl. Engorgo. Immediately, the button began to swell like a balloon, growing until it was about the size of a plate. Oh, well done! Professor Flitwick exclaimed, clapping enthusiastically. Everyone, take note, someone has already succeeded. 5 points to Hufflepuff. While Kyle made it look easy, it was another story for the rest of the class. Mikkel and Ryan tried to mimic his movements, rotating their wrists again and again, but the buttons before them stubbornly remained unchanged. Frustrated, Mikkel gave his button a jab with his wand, and with a loud pop, it flew off, whizzing past Professor Flitwick's hair and bouncing off the wall. Across the room, Gryffindor students were having just as much trouble. Engorgo. Engorgo, one Gryffindor student shouted, clearly forgetting Professor Flitwick's instructions as he wildly swung his arms like a windmill. His button didn't budge, but he was so into it that he accidentally jabbed Katie Bell, who stood beside him. By Merlin's beard. Professor Flitwick sighed, face in hands as though bracing for what would come next. A second later, Katie began to swell into a round, floating ball, drifting slowly up toward the ceiling. Her eyes wide with terror, she flailed her arms, letting out a piercing scream. Don't panic, Miss Bell, don't panic. Professor Flitwick reassured her as he rushed over, quickly reversing the charm. Once she was back to normal, he sent the shaken Katie off to the hospital wing. Charms accidents were nothing new to him, and he had become quite adept at handling them. Mr. McLaggen, your arm movements were far too wild, which is extremely dangerous, Professor Flitwick admonished, casting a stern look at the Gryffindor student. That will be 10 points from Gryffindor. After Charms, Kyle tried to catch up with Kanna, but she had already left. From that day on, she never brought up the incident again, as if the bottle of Felix Felicis had been nothing more than an ordinary bottle of pumpkin juice sitting around. There were no secrets at Hogwarts. By the next day, news had already spread of McLaggen from Gryffindor accidentally inflating his classmate like a balloon in Charms class. That's incredible, Harry said, eating toast at the table, looking curiously at Ron beside him. How did he even manage that? Never mind that, Ron muttered, clearly not wanting to dwell on it. Instead, he looked eagerly at Harry. Is it true what you just said, that Professor McGonagall really made you seeker? That's what she said, Harry replied. She even took me to meet a 5th year named Wood, who's going to train me. Oliver Wood? Asked Ron, wide-eyed. Harry nodded. He's Gryffindor's Quidditch captain. I can't believe it, you're only a first year. Ron, with a forkful of pie poised halfway to his mouth, added, "Harry, you're probably the youngest Quidditch player in years." "Wood told me I'd be the youngest in a century," Harry said, taking a bite of pie. "A century?" Ron repeated, staring blankly at Harry. "I start training tomorrow," Harry added. "But don't tell anyone, Wood wants to keep it a secret." Just then, Fred and George entered the hall. They spotted Harry right away and came over, grinning. "Nice going," George whispered. "Wood told us. We're on the Quidditch team too, as beaters. We're definitely going to win the House Cup this year," Fred said excitedly. "You wouldn't believe how surprised Cedric and Kyle were when they heard." "They're on the Hufflepuff team," George added. Before this, they were convinced Gryffindor was doomed. "Ha, two silly prefects. Kyle's trying out for Quidditch?" Harry asked, surprised. He'd assumed that students like Kyle, who were as academically gifted as Hermione, wouldn't be interested in Quidditch. "Not officially yet," Fred explained. "But he's in the final tryouts tomorrow. If he makes it, he'll be on the team." "You should come watch," George suggested. "Get a sneak peek at the competition." "Really?" Harry's eyes lit up. "But isn't it for Hufflepuff?" He was suddenly eager to learn more about Quidditch in any way he could. Observing the Hufflepuff team tryouts sounded like the perfect opportunity. "Oh, go ahead," Fred assured him. "Slytherin might mind, but Hufflepuff won't care." "We've got to run," George added. Lee Jordan thinks he's found a new secret passage out of the school. Behind the statue of Gregory the Smarmy. Fred grinned. "We found that one on our first day. Good luck. See you later." "Bye," Harry called, turning back to Ron. "I'm going to check out the tryouts tomorrow. Want to come?" "Sure," Ron agreed after a moment. "Though I should warn you, I've seen Kyle play Quidditch with Fred before, and he's really good. It might not be great for morale." "Really?" Harry's curiosity only grew stronger, a flutter of excitement making him even more eager for tomorrow. Channel Dream Novel. Chapter 162, Human Bludger. The next day was a weekend, so there were no classes. When Kyle opened the dormitory door that morning, he found Cedric waiting for him with his arms stretched out. "What's with that pose, trying to be a lucky cat?" Kyle asked suspiciously. "What cat?" "Never mind, it's not important," Cedric said, dropping his arms. "I'm here to get you. Did you forget that today is Quidditch tryouts? Why are you only coming out now?" "No, I just woke up," Kyle said, rubbing his face. It was a rare weekend with beautiful weather, so he'd taken the chance to sleep in. Cedric sighed, rubbing his forehead. "The tryouts start at 10, and it's already 9:30. How can you sleep through that?" "There's still half an hour." "Plenty of time," Kyle replied, grabbing his Nimbus 2000 and following Cedric out of the common room. Outside, they were joined by Conna, who had been waiting while Cedric fetched Kyle. Together, they headed across the grounds to the Quidditch pitch. Though the selection hadn't officially started, the area was already buzzing with activity. Even Professor Sprout, who rarely left the greenhouse, was on the pitch, talking with Madame Hooch. The stands around the field were packed with students, including Hufflepuffs and those from other houses. Judging by the anxious faces, at least half of them were here to gather intel on the competition. But Harris, the team captain, didn't seem to mind. He had no intention of shooing anyone away. When Kyle and the others arrived, he was even enthusiastically explaining the basics of Quidditch to a group of younger students. "Quidditch is really quite simple," he said. "The chasers score by throwing the quaffle, while the beaters protect their teammates from the bludgers and hit the bludgers toward the opposition." In the stands, Harris leaned toward a bespectacled boy and continued, "But you don't need to worry about all that, Potter. As Seeker, your job is to catch the golden snitch as quickly as possible." "What's a golden snitch?" Harry asked, curious. "A very tricky little creature," Harris replied. But catching it ends the game and adds 150 points to your team's score. Golden. Snitch. Harry murmured, trying to remember. Suddenly, he looked at Harris, puzzled. Wait, how did you know I was the seeker? It was easy to figure out, Harris said, shaking his head. Wood's been grinning non-stop the past few days, even eating 2 extra spoonfuls at meals. The only thing that could make him that happy is finally finding a seeker. So Wood told you? Harry let out a sigh of relief. At least it hadn't leaked from his side. Not at all, Harris replied with a laugh. Wood actually tried to keep it secret, saying he'd only be that happy if his owl had a second baby. So, I went straight to Professor McGonagall. She's the one who told me you're Gryffindor's new seeker. Professor McGonagall. Harry sat in stunned silence, feeling a pang of sympathy for Wood. He'd planned to keep his position a secret weapon to surprise the other teams, but in less than a day, the information had come straight from McGonagall herself. This was hardly a secret. You'll do great, Harry. I'm looking forward to the day we play against you, Harris said, patting him on the shoulder before heading toward the field. He greeted Kyle and the others as he passed by. Looks like it's about to start, Kyle said, taking his Nimbus 2000 and settling into a seat at the front of the bleachers. Conna glanced up at the field and asked, how many players are we picking this time? 2, a beater and a chaser, Cedric replied. Kyle's trying out for the chaser spot. Kyle nodded beside him. He much preferred the thrill of scoring goals to the constant dodge and counterattack of the beaters or the endless search for small, elusive snitches. Sure, each goal was worth only 10 points, but with enough goals, a chaser could easily add up to 150 points, or even more. Right at 10 o'clock, the tryouts began. The beater selection was first, with 3 candidates competing. Under Harris's direction, the 3 of them mounted their broomsticks and took their positions at the center of the pitch. For beaters, accuracy and swing strength were key, and Harris had brought the box containing the bludgers out in advance. All they had to do was stay on their brooms as long as possible, with the last one remaining being awarded the team spot. As Harris opened the box, the 2 bludgers shot out like cannonballs, immediately wreaking havoc in the air. The 3 candidates took turns using their bats to deflect the bludgers aimed at them. Having passed initial tryouts, they were no pushovers, and it would take more than a stray bludger to knock any of them off their brooms. The crowd watched in silence, fully absorbed in the contest. About 5 minutes in, the first elimination happened. It was the youngest player, a second year. He'd grown impatient after no one had faltered and tried aiming a bludger at the other 2 to throw them off balance. But he overextended, and his bat slipped from his grasp, flying out of his hands. He barely had a moment to react before a bludger zoomed past and knocked him clean off his broom. Oh, that must have hurt, Harry muttered, wincing as he subconsciously touched his shoulder, feeling a twinge of imagined pain. That's the life of a beater, Ron said knowingly. George told me his arm was broken 3 times by bludgers when he first joined the team. Fred wasn't much better, he broke his leg. Kyle, overhearing, looked at Cedric with disbelief. Fred and George got injured by bludgers? Absolutely not. Cedric replied with certainty. Other beaters have gotten injured, sure, but Fred and George? As far as I know, they went through their entire first year without a single bludger even grazing their robes. He smirked, honestly, they're like bludgers themselves. Channel Dream Novel. Chapter 163, Goal, Goal, and More Goals. On the field, with the first player eliminated, the pressure on the remaining 2 increased significantly. They had to keep 120% of their focus, dodging both bludgers while looking for any chance to unseat their opponent. After over 10 minutes of intense back and forth, the match finally came to a close. To everyone's surprise, the winner turned out to be the underdog third-year student, who used his agility to gain the upper hand against his taller, stronger fifth-year opponent at a crucial moment. The crowd burst into applause and cheers. Harris walked over, smiling as he extended his hand. Willard, welcome to the team. "It's an honor, Captain," the third year replied, shaking Harris's hand, and another round of applause filled the stands. Next up was the selection of the chasers. Kyle got to his feet, grabbed his broom, and made his way onto the field. "Go, Kyle!" Cedric shouted from the stands, setting off a firework. It exploded overhead, forming a massive banner of a running badger with the words, "Go Kyle," emblazoned across it in shimmering letters. Where did he even get that? Kyle wondered as he arrived at the center of the pitch, trying not to look too embarrassed by the dramatic display. He would be competing against two fifth-years for the chaser position. As a chaser, accuracy is key, Harris explained, holding the quaffle. "I'll be playing keeper, and you'll be responsible for scoring. The one who scores the most points within the time limit makes the team. So, who wants to go first?" "I'll go," Kyle volunteered, stepping forward. Going first would mean facing Harris's goalkeeping style with no prior knowledge, but Kyle figured his Nimbus 2000 would help balance the odds. "Great. Don't overthink it, just play as you usually would," Harris encouraged him as he headed to the goalpost. Kyle mounted his broom and pushed off lightly, hovering in the air. "Ready to begin?" Harris called from the goal. "Absolutely," Kyle replied, and at that moment, someone tossed the quaffle up to him from below. Kyle caught it deftly, then surged forward, speeding toward the goal at an impressive pace. Before Harris had fully processed what was happening, Kyle was already at the goalpost, where he casually tossed the quaffle through the open hoop. 10 points, someone in the crowd cheered, then called out teasingly, "Captain, what was that? Were you taking it easy on him?" "Shut it." Harris's face flushed with embarrassment. He hadn't been taking it easy, he'd simply been caught off guard by the speed of the Nimbus 2000. He had known it would be fast, but the difference between the Nimbus 1700 and the Nimbus 2000 was like night and day, despite only 2 years separating them. This is strange. Is this really the Nimbus company he knows? The one that usually just inches forward with minor upgrades? Again. Harris called out, steeling himself. This time, he wasn't about to let himself be caught off guard. Another quaffle was thrown up, and Kyle repeated his previous move, catching the ball and charging straight toward the goal. Now prepared, Harris quickly maneuvered to block him. Kyle feigned a throw with the quaffle in his right hand. He's aiming for the right goal, Harris thought, darting to the right side. But the quaffle didn't fly to the right. Instead, it spun in the air for a moment, then returned right back to Kyle, who easily scored in the now wide-open center hoop. 20 points. "Look, Harry. It's a backhand throw." Ron tugged Harry's arm, grinning with excitement. "Merlin, I never thought I'd get to see one of the Chasers' classic feints up close. Is that move hard to do?" Harry asked, still puzzled. He was new to Quidditch, and his knowledge was limited. Ron nodded. "It's not too hard to throw a backhand pass, but the trick is fooling the keeper. And keep in mind, Harris isn't just any keeper, he's the Hufflepuff captain and probably the most experienced player at Hogwarts." Harry didn't fully understand, but the roar of cheers around him made it clear that Kyle's move had been impressive. So, he joined in, cheering along. "No worries if I don't quite get it. As long as I look like I do," he thought, grinning. Meanwhile, Harris's face flushed even redder at the light-hearted jeering from the stands. Of course, he knew the backhand pass. He'd used it to score the final goal in the Quidditch Cup 2 years ago, helping Hufflepuff win by a 10-point margin. He never imagined he'd be the one falling for the move one day. "No wonder the Ravenclaw keeper looked so bitter when I pulled this trick on him back then," Harris thought. "It really stings to get duped like that. If I'd known, I would have had our regular keeper play today," Harris muttered. He'd stepped in to avoid discouraging the tryouts, thinking a seasoned keeper might lower morale. Now, it seemed that decision had backfired. He couldn't swap mid-tryout, so he had no choice but to grit his teeth and carry on. Kyle had taken only about a minute to score twice, with plenty of time left in the 10-minute trial. In the minutes that followed, he continued to show off the full speed of his Nimbus 2000, catching the quaffle effortlessly and zooming to the goal. Each score showcased a new technique, sometimes a feint, sometimes relying solely on the broom's sheer speed to dart past Harris. And each time, Harris found himself struggling to keep up. Gradually, Harris's frustration began to transform into admiration. Sitting on his broom, he watched Kyle with a newfound respect. This is a natural chaser. Last year, it was Cedric, and this year, it's Kyle. Harris felt a grin forming as he finally understood why would have been so uncharacteristically joyful. With talent like this, anyone would be smiling, he thought, barely holding back a laugh. Channel Dream Novel. Chapter 164, The Damned Sorting Hat. 10 minutes had flown by in a flash. As the final whistle blew, Kyle raised his arm high and, with his last ounce of energy, flung the quaffle through the air. But it was too far. Harris intercepted it, breaking his own 0 streak in the process. On the sidelines, the scoreboard froze at 210 points, meaning Kyle had scored a total of 21 goals in those 10 minutes. Scoring 2 goals a minute, even while racing across the pitch to retrieve the quaffle each time, was nothing short of incredible. The 3 quaffles they'd used hadn't been enough to keep up with his speed. By the end, Professor McGonagall, observing from the edge of the field, had conjured 2 more with her transfiguration charm just to keep the match running smoothly to the end. By Merlin's beard, I never want to be keeper again. Back on the ground, Harris let out a deep sigh of relief. Those 10 minutes had been a whirlwind of joy and frustration for him. The joy. Hufflepuff had found a gifted chaser. If all went well, this second year named Kyle would be the key to winning the Quidditch Cup. Harris himself was one of the best chasers at Hogwarts, responsible for most of Hufflepuff's points each game. But the issue was, his fellow chasers fell short, and they struggled to work well as a team. Harris often ended up scoring alone, which placed a heavy demand on his stamina. This was why Hufflepuff wasn't known for lasting in prolonged matches. The other concern was that if he were heavily guarded or injured, Hufflepuff's chances would plummet. Fortunately, Cedric, a talented seeker, had joined last year. With Cedric on the hunt for the Golden Snitch, it was hard for other teams to draw games out for too long. And now, with Kyle's arrival, Hufflepuff's main vulnerability had been instantly strengthened. Harris could almost see the Quidditch Cup within reach, and that filled him with exhilaration. The frustration? Well, that was simple. Anyone would feel humiliated after being turned into a laughingstock for 10 straight minutes. "Captain, good thing you didn't sign up to be keeper," one teammate joked. "Otherwise, we might never see the Quidditch Cup." "Shut it, Farrell." Harris shot him a glare. "Actually, I've noticed your skills slipping lately. Special training tomorrow at 8. 8? Farrell's grin vanished. With a long face, he protested, "I'm fine with special training, but could we make it 10, or maybe 9? Hufflepuffs weren't as studious as Ravenclaws or as hyperactive as Gryffindors. On weekends, they tended to sleep in. 8 o'clock sounded brutal." "No chance," Harris retorted. "Be there at 8 sharp, or every minute you're late means an extra hour of training." With that, Harris strode confidently toward the middle of the pitch. Despite Kyle's flawless performance, the selection process had to continue. He turned to the remaining 2 candidates and asked, "Who's next?" The 2 fifth-year students exchanged looks and shook their heads casually. One raised his hands in surrender. "No need. I'm forfeiting." Even though Harris might have been playing it a bit safe, it was clear that having Kyle's score wouldn't have made a difference. There was no point in dragging it out. The other students silently agreed, and the matter was settled. "I abstain as well. And don't hold back, laugh if you want to," he said, breaking into hearty laughter himself. Hufflepuff had produced another prodigy, and he was genuinely thrilled. "Ahem. The professors are watching, try to keep it together," Harris said, feigning sternness. Celebrating was all well and good, but they'd need to save it for the common room. With so many professors around, it wasn't the place to show too much pride. They didn't want to invite any unnecessary scrutiny. Harris held back his own excitement, forcing himself to look serious. "Since you both decided to abstain, then." He stepped up to Kyle and extended his hand. "Congratulations, Kyle. You're officially the team's new chaser." "My pleasure, Captain," Kyle replied, shaking his hand firmly. From the stands, Professor Sprout watched them, her face beaming like a blooming chomping cabbage. Beside her, however, Professor McGonagall looked anything but pleased. She clutched her guide to Advanced Transfiguration so tightly her hands were trembling. It hurts so much," she thought. "Why is a talent like this in Hufflepuff?" McGonagall was certain that with Kyle and Harry Potter on the same team, Gryffindor would be unstoppable. But alas, Kyle was a Hufflepuff. Blast that Sorting Hat. On the 8th floor in the headmaster's office, the Sorting Hat, busy composing a new tune, suddenly sneezed. "How curious," Dumbledore remarked, glancing at it. "Do you catch colds too?" "I don't think so," replied the Sorting Hat, perplexed. "After all, I am just a hat." It tried to rub its non-existent head with its brim but ended up merely wiping its mouth. "Albus, I have a feeling someone's cursing me," it muttered. "I'd sooner believe you've caught a cold," Dumbledore said with a chuckle. "From what I've seen, no student resents their house enough to hold a grudge against you." "You're right." The Sorting Hat nodded, reassured. Its choices were flawless. "Could it be that I actually have a cold?" The Sorting Hat wavered, a rare bout of self-doubt overtaking it. Yet, it knew Godric Gryffindor hadn't programmed it for such trivial things. "I'm not certain if a pepper-up potion would work on you," Dumbledore mused, "but would you like to give it a try?" He stepped up to the Sorting Hat, and with a small wave, a tiny vial appeared in his hand. "This is the most potent remedy for a cold." "Let's give it a go," the Sorting Hat replied after a moment's consideration. "By the way, Albus, your magic's gotten even sharper." "Oh, just a few small tricks," Dumbledore said, smiling as he poured the pepper-up potion carefully into the Sorting Hat's brim. Since the hat couldn't swallow, the potion was simply applied externally, sinking into the fabric little by little and leaving a dark brown stain, making it look even grubbier. Neither of them seemed bothered by that. "Well, how do you feel?" Dumbledore asked. "I think it's helped," said the Sorting Hat, tipping its brim. "At least I'm not sneezing anymore." Channel Dream Novel. Chapter 165, The Brawl Incident. Quidditch, as Hogwarts' most beloved sport, always drew passionate interest. Shortly after the selection trials, the news that Kyle had scored 21 goals in 10 minutes spread like wildfire. Over the following days, it became the hottest topic of conversation, with reactions ranging from shock and excitement to outright disbelief. "This is totally exaggerated," Zabini scoffed at the Slytherin table. "I'll admit, Kyle is decent, and that map he made is respectable enough for me to approve of it, but there's no way he's that good at Quidditch. 21 goals in 10 minutes. Even I can't do that, so how could he?" "Are you saying you're better than Kyle?" Malfoy asked, giving him a sidelong glance. "Do you doubt it?" Zabini replied smugly. "My fifth stepfather was a professional Quidditch player. He said I'm a rare Quidditch prodigy, and that the moment I graduate, professional teams will be clamoring to sign me." Several students nearby couldn't help but stifle their reactions, some twitching the corners of their mouths. Mrs. Zabini was famously beautiful, and she'd had 7 husbands, all of whom had died mysteriously, leaving her substantial inheritances. "I've heard things like that before, more than once," Malfoy sneered. Since childhood, he'd recognized such praise as hollow flattery, and he couldn't believe anyone actually took it seriously. "It's true. He wouldn't lie to me." Zabini protested, his chin jutting out defensively. "In that case," Malfoy replied, eyeing him with a hint of challenge, "why don't you try out for the school team?" "What are you talking about, Draco? I'm only a first year, I'm not even allowed to play." "But Pot," Malfoy started, then clamped his mouth shut. He knew perfectly well that Harry Potter had joined the team, and every time he thought about it, it irritated him to no end. Even worse, he was the one who had inadvertently set it in motion. Just thinking about Potter and Weasley's smug faces this morning made him feel queasy, like he'd eaten a spoiled cockroach cluster. If he'd known things would turn out this way, he would never have grabbed that oaf's remembrall. Zabini, unaware of Malfoy's discomfort, thought Malfoy was conceding his point. His confidence swelled, and he announced, "Just wait. Next year, I'll definitely join the team, and I'll show Kyle what real Quidditch looks like. But, Draco, you definitely won't make the team." Suddenly, he looked at Malfoy with a sneer. "I saw you on a broom once. How can I put it, you're not even as fast as my grandmother." Malfoy's face flushed red. As far as he was concerned, he was a Quidditch genius. After all, he'd once thrilled his family by skillfully dodging Muggle helicopters. When had he ever faced such an insult? "Oh." Malfoy replied slowly, a smirk spreading on his face. "Which grandmother are you talking about? The third one, or the seventh?" Zabini's face reddened as well. He despised it when people brought up his mother's many marriages. "How dare you? You'll regret that." Furious, he threw a punch that landed squarely on Malfoy's face. Bang! "Ah!" Malfoy cried out, clutching his face in shock. "You actually hit me. My own father has never hit me. What are you waiting for? Get him, I want him pulverized." At Malfoy's command, his two loyal lackeys, Crabbe and Goyle, immediately sprang into action. Both were half a head taller than their peers and built like boulders. In moments, they had Zabini pinned, delivering swift blows that quickly subdued the wiry boy. Malfoy stood up, prepared to step in and finish things himself, when Professor McGonagall suddenly appeared by their side. "A fight?" Professor McGonagall's voice was steely, her expression severe. With a swift wave of her wand, she separated the brawling boys, who were now sprawled on the floor, tangled in each other's limbs. "Nothing this disgraceful has ever occurred at Hogwarts before," Professor McGonagall declared, her tone icy. "Malfoy insulted me first, Professor." Zabini mumbled in a weak attempt to defend himself. His face was bruised and swollen from Crabbe and Goyle's punches, and he had even lost a few teeth, making his words barely coherent. "Save your explanations for Professor Snape, he'll determine your punishment," Professor McGonagall said sternly. "Now, all four of you, follow me." "Pardon me, Professor." "I might have misheard," Malfoy interjected, stepping forward with a pained expression. He covered his face, looking innocent as he protested, "Everyone here can confirm I didn't start the fight. I was the victim." "You heard me perfectly well, Mr. Malfoy," Professor McGonagall replied, unfazed. "Follow me, and don't make me repeat myself." Malfoy, realizing further protest was useless, lowered his head and trudged after her out of the Great Hall. Harry Potter, watching the scene, barely contained his excitement. "Look, Ron. Malfoy's finally going to get it." Ron, clutching a chicken leg, grinned widely. "About time. Serves him right." They exchanged gleeful high-fives, celebrating Malfoy's impending punishment as if it were more thrilling than scoring points for their house. The Slytherin drama did nothing to quell the school's enthusiasm for Quidditch, especially not for the Hufflepuffs. Harris, for one, seemed as if he'd downed an extra-strong potion. Whether in the common room or in class, he'd burst out laughing randomly, startling everyone around him. One day, on his way to class, he bumped into Oliver Wood from Gryffindor in the corridor. Oddly, both began chuckling the moment they saw each other. "Wood. Hello." Harris greeted with enthusiasm. "Harris. Good to see you." Wood replied, grinning as if they hadn't crossed paths in years. "What class are you off to?" "History of Magic." "You." "Defense against the Dark Arts." "Ah, not too different, I suppose." They exchanged a few more pleasantries before, simultaneously, they both asked, "So, what's got you laughing?" They both paused, suddenly uncertain. "Well, you know," Wood broke the silence first. "My owl, she just had twins. There's something about new life, it's a beautiful thing, and every time I think of it, I feel a warm glow inside." "Ah, I can relate," Harris said, nodding seriously. "My owl found its mate here at school. It's a beautiful love story, really. I'm just so happy for it." "Is that so?" Wood replied, feigning surprise. "Then congratulations to you." "Huh, same to you," Harris answered quickly. An awkward silence followed, during which each mentally cursed the other's shamelessness. Now the fun in this clip is over. Which listeners haven't liked and commented yet? You can press like and comment to encourage the admin find the fun in the next clip. May the listeners be happy forever.